This is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I am Andrew Savage, and Nancy Richards is still on her European vacation. She is in London right now, but headed to Portugal next week. But for right now, we are joined by former Democratic Party chair for Staten Island, Laura Sword. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to talk to you, especially when I heard you were stepping down. And I first, before we go into the questions and
I'm
what
going to stop you before you get to the questions. I did not step down. I did not run for reelection. There's a big difference.
Okay, well, that's okay. I wanted to talk to you when I heard you weren't going to run for re-election because
Thank you.
uh, I wanted to, first, before we get into the questions, what we're going to talk about, I wanted to thank you for your service to the party for many years. We were just talking about, how we know each other and how long we've known each other. I was a wee little 22-year-old in Mike McMahon's campaign office when you came in and you did a presentation on behalf of the Democratic Lawyers Council. And you were just everywhere since then, for every Democrat, every candidate up and down. And so we want to just thank you. Nancy, too. Nancy told me to relay that to you as well, so that we thank you for your service to the party for many years.
Thank you. That means the world. And I'm bummed that I don't get to see Nancy because I love her. And, I'm hoping she comes back.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a reason she's checking out, different locations.
Portugal. I know.
Yeah, it's just, it's, for all the
Can't
obvious
say I blame
reasons.
her with the.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to curse on this show?
Oh, absolutely. We curse all the
Okay.
time.
I have a potty mouth.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the shit show that's going on, I understand why she's checking out Portugal.
Yeah, and so before we get into where we are as a country and as a borough, I just want our listeners to know a little bit about your experience in the party because I think a lot of people don't quite understand what county parties do, and I don't think a lot of people understand uh, like how somebody rises to become county chair, the first woman county chair in Staten Island's history of the party. So, how did that happen for you?
I first got involved because I was a political science major in school. I was always interested in politics, but one of my neighbors, when she found out I was a political science major, decided that I needed to work on a campaign. And it was Marie Smith, who you may know. Marie worked for the Board of Elections for ever and ever and ever, and
I remember Maria.
yeah, and she would give people meatballs if they actually helped campaigns. So she lived
That's an
about three doors
incentive.
down from me. Yeah, not bad. It was a pretty good deal. So she decided that I needed to be involved, and she worked for the Board of Elections. And Sheila Del Giorno was at the Board of Elections, and John Del Giorno was about to start a campaign for the then newly created Mid Island Council seat. So she sent me off to a meeting, and it was somewhere in Midland Beach. And Bob Gigante was the chair of the party at the time, and I'm walking up and down Midland Avenue trying to find this. It wasn't a Union Hall. I think it was like a Knights of Columbus, and I'm trying to find where it was. And I stopped a guy walking down the street, and I said, "Do you know where whatever the address was?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, come with me." And it turned out to be Bob Gigante, and he will still tell people that. Well, we miss him. He's no longer with us, but he would tell people all the time that I was chewing gum and wearing headphones, and he made me younger than I really was in that story. And but when I did walk into the room, I was literally the only person in the room under 50 years old until John Del Giorno got there. And he got up to speak. I think I was 19 and he was probably, I think he was like 28 at the time. And he spoke and I was absolutely captivated. Here's this young person who is involved and active and talking about the things that are important to everyone that I knew. And he's going to run for office. So I volunteered for the campaign. John Salazzo was his campaign manager. We shared office space with Wayne Ozzie. He was running for judge at the time. And I was hooked. And I did everything on every campaign you can imagine. Stuffed envelopes, I made phone calls, I knocked doors, uh, you know, eventually starting to, then I was a treasurer for a campaign and then a field director for Mike McMahon. I was a field director for Tom Swazi when he ran for governor, and I did a lot of field ops types of things. And yep, I think I try to look at running county committee from that perspective, right? From the volunteer perspective, that everyone in that room, when we have it, they're all volunteers.
Right.
Same as I was from age 19 and up until being county chair, which is a volunteer position. So every individual person that takes the time out of their life to do that is crucial to the bigger picture. So I try to keep in mind that they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah, and so well, that brings us to what do county committees actually do? Like I remember when one of the last memories I have with my grandmother was she was signing the petition for me to be on the county committee, and I and she was like, "Well, what's this for?" And I said, "Well, it's for the county committee." And she's like, "Well, what's the county committee?" And this was a woman in her 80s. And so and I said, "Well, they get candidates, they nominate candidates, they elect candidates, they are, any presence that the party has here, that's usually the force behind it." So but I don't understand, like she didn't. I think a lot of people don't understand how that all happened. So how does that all happen?
I'm I think most people don't know what the county committee is, and I really think it goes to show that we do need more civics in our schools, and we need to start at the fundamental basics of, how our democracy operates. And while county committees differ in different places, the fundamental principle for any county committee, which is the operational branch of a political party, um, the main job is to nominate candidates that are in that have the same values as the party and follow the party platform, and to get those candidates on the ballot. So that's the primary goal. Then we have all of these side missions, right? Like we want to register voters so that we could meet that goal. We want to get volunteers on campaigns. We want to train people on how to talk to people at the doors, on how to make phone calls. We want to teach people the skills that they need to work on a campaign or run for office and start building and really build benches. We want to be able to message to the greater um, population what our platform is and what our candidates stand for. So there's a lot of that, but the main mission is nominating and getting them on the ballot.
Yeah, well, this is kind of an addendum. I've heard from more local candidates here and elsewhere. I was at Kamala Harris's book tour last week at the town hall, and was sitting with a woman who was sitting next to me, and she's running for office in Massapequa. And she said, I'm running, but they call it Magapequa there because it's very red.
Oh,
And 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 so she said, I'm running, but I'm, not sure I'm going to win. Um, but the national party is kind of a albatross around my neck a little bit, just in terms of the branding. Did you find that when you were chair and when you had these various roles in the party that the brand of the national party was an obstacle?
it's a really good question. Yes and no. I think the National Party does try to do a lot to help local parties, and they do give us resources that way as far as messaging and things like that. I think in a lot of ways they're doing the best they can with what they got, but we're living in a universe where our message is the right message, and they're trying to spread that message, but the Republicans and the disinformation machine that they have has kind of muddied the waters and made things cloudy. And we're in a point where truth doesn't matter anymore.
No, it doesn't.
And
It's
yeah,
terrible.
so while people have accused the National Party of being ineffective, they don't know what else they would have possibly done. We do need some younger leadership that could communicate better and help make sure that our message is getting through. But there's things that you can't control, and that's if someone is given, here's message one, here's message two, and they decide that, message two is what resonates with them, how do we combat that if they're accepting these lies? If they believe that the government is shut down right now because the Democrats were trying to get quote unquote illegal health care.
Yeah.
The nonsense going way back to when Obama was president, and we were talking about the Affordable Care Act, and they were talking about death panels. If you asked any high school kid back, when Hillary Clinton was first running, about Hillary Clinton, they would say Benghazi and emails. Like, they know how to get this negative messaging to penetrate the.
And it's simplified in a way that you're talking about because the
Yep,
emails, Benghazi, that
exactly.
all, because, they're simple words, but they have so many like connotations now. You
But
automatically know what's being referred to
yes,
and what
but
they're talking
but they
about.
also all get use the same exact words. They will repeat, repeat, repeat until it sinks in, using the exact same phrasing. And we need to do better about having messaging from up top come all the way down to the local level, where we're doing the same thing and using the same words, not just the same message phrased the same way in bite-sized pieces that are, comprehensible, repeatable, memeable. Um,
Yeah, we love our memes here at the Admiral Podcast. We love our memes. Yeah, absolutely. We should, and we should do it. Um, I do think that the youthfulness part that you mentioned is good. I was on with Jazzy the other day, and we were talking about, not that we have anything against, senior citizens or older people, but I think the one takeaway we should have had from last year is that when it's time to go, it's time to go.
hey, I
Um,
got the message. Time to
yeah,
go. Bye.
yeah. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And so, and that should apply to leaders, and also just I think leaders who seem inauthentic. The one thing I always admired about you, and I said this before we came on, is that you were not in the boys' club. You always seemed to have your own mind. You always seemed to communicate authentically. And I think, in the age of Donald Trump, where he's everywhere and all the time, he's so ubiquitous, he's so omnipresent in all of our lives.
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's hard to, compete with that with Hakeem Jeffries' strongly worded letter. It's,
Oh, it's a fair point, but it goes to what I was trying to say before too, right? Like, so yes, Hakeem Jeffries, how he delivers a message isn't necessarily as relatable as we would like, but what he's saying is true, and what he's saying is important, and what he's saying is, the right message to combat what's going on. He's telling people this is what the government shutdown, like right now, right? He's telling people this is what the government shutdown is about. This is why it's happening. He has the facts, he has everything on his side, but I get what you're saying. The delivery doesn't
oh,
necessarily always come across
oh,
as
I can't listen to him.
relatable.
I can't
See,
listen
like, if
to
even
him.
you can't listen to him, that's the
Oh,
problem, right? Because
yeah,
people aren't hearing Hakeem Jeffries. People are hearing Mike Johnson.
yeah.
They're hearing Pete Hegseth, for Christ's sakes, with his nonsense.
Oh yeah, well, no fat generals. You might want to tell your boss that. I mean,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, right. But it's the fire hose. We're at the other end of the fire hose of all of this insanity,
yeah,
with the things that they're saying, whether and making news over things that, if you would have told me 10 years ago that this would be real, I would have
we
been
would have
completely
laughed.
convinced that it was satire, that it was
Yeah,
the Onion, like that this all of these headlines that we're seeing now just don't seem real. They seem like
no,
something out of a bad sci-fi novel.
yeah. Well, it is. Well, I mean, the Hunger Games is like, preferable, I think, but I think we're at the intersection of like the Hunger Games, The
And
Handmaid's
The Handmaid's
Tale,
Tale. There you go.
1984. I saw the Venn
Yep.
diagram somewhere. That's where we are, like
I
right in the
reread
middle.
Brave New World a couple of weeks ago just because needed a gut check to go, okay, my reality isn't this yet, right?
Well, a friend of mine who's an
Give
English.
me this past the Soma.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned the schools before. My friend who's a English teacher, a friend of mine in Nancy, she's actually teaching The Handmaid's Tale right now, and so it's sort of reinvigorated, I guess, an interest.
You might not want to say that on a podcast where people could hear you because you're going to get Donald Trump talking about how the schools are teaching the woke agenda.
Oh, I know, and well, and I might get, that dickless Brandon Carr for, trying to shut down our podcast too. So well, either
Yeah,
way.
free speech doesn't, we've gotten the message. Free speech doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and unless there's enough of a pushback and they don't want to deal with it or they lose enough money, then evidently, it still does under certain conditions. Well, I want to ask you about, I know I always said this to people, like I always refrained from bashing whoever it was, the county leader, because it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, and it's the kind of thing that everybody always thinks that they could do better until they're there until they are have some role where they have some comparable responsibilities. And so, um, what were the highs and lows just of your whole political career? And it's not easy to be a Staten Island Democrat. It's such a pendulum. It goes back and forth all the time.
It is very difficult, especially right now. I think we're living in such, divisive times, and the levels of vitriol are where I haven't seen them before. And I think one thing that surprised me as county chair is seeing how that has played out in the past few years. I've had district leaders and county committee members who've had to come to me and say that they were actually fearful to knock doors, particularly in the South Shore. We had the incident that took place when Zoran Mamdani came to Staten Island and had the event at Istanbul Bay. We had, what was going on during the pandemic. There was just this fear-based reaction to things that um, surprised me. As long as I've been in this, the 37 years that I've been involved in politics, like right now feels different. And I understand people's fears, and it's concerning. So I think that if you talk about low points, that would be the low points. What I treasure about all of it is that those low points have been countered by a sense of unity within the party. Like the negativity that's been directed really brought a lot of people together also. And you know, we saw over 170 new people come to us to volunteer on Kamala Harris's campaign, um, from all over Staten Island. And, folks on the South Shore who were, I'm so grateful that there are other people from the South Shore here because I,
Yeah.
feel alone. Um, Being able to keep those folks active and involved and engaged, is a challenge sometimes. People coming off of a hard loss like that, I think we had a lot of people who felt very disenchanted and disappointed and depressed.
Yeah. No,
I was depressed.
I know. Well, I said the other day with Jazzy that night when I was watching the returns with Nancy, and once it became clear what was going to happen, she sent me home with some sleep aids. I'll say that. Like,
Yeah,
so I needed,
I wish I was hanging out with you guys that night.
I needed some sleep aids that night. It was terrible. It was,
Yeah, I
and
don't think I slept for like 3 days after that. It was
yeah, and it was,
horrific.
yeah. But I think you bring up an important point about, people feeling alone, especially on Staten Island. That's one of the reasons we started this podcast, is because we wanted to reach like-minded people, and even if people hate watch or listen to us, that's fine. But we wanted to, do this to promote a sense of community, and a lot of the ways, you all do that at county as well. But we felt, that digitally people have relationships to phones and podcasts and things like that, and so that's why we started this podcast. But
I'm really grateful that you did, and I really hope you're reaching a lot of people and that they're feeling exactly what you want them to feel from that.
yeah, and and Rosie O'Donnell was on Nicole Wallace's podcast the other day, and she said that that was the thing, finding your community wherever it is, however it looks, even if you don't want to go to a protest or knock on doors, there are definitely, things that you can do. But
Yeah, I will use that as an opportunity to plug so that Charles gets people, if anyone's listening and they feel that way, email Staten Island Democrats at gmail.com and we will get you involved.
I'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'll put it in the show notes for us. And um yeah, I just think that the community part is really important. And
Well,
I know,
I mean, you've heard me talk about in meetings all the time. Like I always refer to the Democratic Party as a family.
oh yeah,
And
we are not part of any organized political party. We are Democrats.
yes, exactly.
I, I don't remember who said it, but I think, but that's one of my favorite quotes about
It's a perfect quote.
it.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about messaging too, right? Like it's because it's a feature and a bug, right? It's because we are a very big tent and we welcome and value differences of opinion. And we talk a lot more nuance than soundbite. And that's part of the reason why the messaging doesn't penetrate as quickly and as deeply as it might on the other side when they're just using fear mongering.
Well, yeah, and Donald Trump's vocabulary is that of a fourth grader. I mean, so like, I'm being really generous when I say that
You
for
are.
like and I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult fourth graders, but like, and but I noticed a kind of a, I grew up here on Staten Island, so I always knew that it was, somewhat more rightward than the rest of the city was. But I noticed a really hard turn after COVID, during and after COVID,
Yes.
a very aggressive turn, a really aggressive turn,
Aggressive
and
is the right word.
aggressive in that, people driving around with these crazy flags, people who are, protesting vaccines to own the libs. I mean,
Hmm.
getting, if you want to get measles just to teach me a lesson, fine. I mean, I don't like, I don't know what to tell you, but um, I just noticed that really hard right turn, and not right as in the traditionally political right, the way that we might know of it. Like I had Susan Molinari on last year on this podcast,
I listened to that. That
and
was
she
fantastic.
and she said it's become a cult. And
Hmm.
she said it's become a cult, and especially here on Staten Island. I drove by on the South Shore. I drove by, when people have those big inflatable things around Christmas with Santa and everything. There was one of Trump. There was one of Trump. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I almost crashed the fucking car. I was like, I could not believe it.
Yeah, I can't wrap my brain around the way people idolize him like he's a god.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. It is incredibly disturbing.
Well, I think, I think part of the reason for that, and I wonder what you think as the former chair of the party who is opposed. Um, I think on Staten Island, there's always been a resentment under the surface of, you know, somebody's taking something from us. The city's taking
Hmm.
something from us. Uh, Minorities are taking something from us. And we have no choice but to adjust to anything they're offering. And so, um, do you find that that's what, and I think Donald Trump allowed for a permission for that to
Oh,
thrive.
he's given them a permission for a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
The scapegoating, DEI as the reason why things go wrong. The permission for racism, permission for like there's just a lot of negativity and hate that he has allowed to fester and allowed people to feel more comfortable feeling because they feel like now they're part of something.
they're validated.
And
They're
yeah,
validated. They
it's
are,
terrifying.
yeah, they're validated. And I was talking to somebody who said they see it even in traffic now, like people just run red lights, like totally willy-nilly, more
Yep,
than ever
rule
before.
of law is out the window.
Yeah. And so I just wondered, like, did you, so clearly, I think we're in agreement. You think that there's been some unlocking of
Yeah.
resentment over the last, I would say, even in the first couple of years of Trump's term, it wasn't quite as bad as it is now. And so
But it
I
laid
would,
the groundwork.
oh, it did. I think it really took a turn in 2020.
Yes,
That's really,
absolutely.
yeah, that's really where I saw a lot of this
Yeah, and that's
resentment.
where the disinformation and misinformation campaigns became truly pervasive.
And it's
The-
mainstream on their side. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
mainstream on their side to do that. And so I think that that's been a really disturbing thing. And so I am hoping that the information around the mayor's race becomes uh, more apparent. I saw a Suffolk University poll that said that Zohra Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo are tied on Staten Island for
Yep,
first place, and which would
I heard that.
yeah, and so so the county had a really interesting role in this mayoral election. Now, initially in March, and you called me to ask me what I thought about it. I was like, well, you know how I feel about Andrew Cuomo.
Yes,
You know how I feel about that. But
we're
um,
we're both city employees.
yeah. Yeah, and um, so just explain what county's role was back then. Obviously, the primary happened. Zohra Mamdani won convincingly. And how did that change county's calculation there?
Okay, so when we first endorsed, we had a executive committee meeting, and it was a contentious executive committee meeting. But Andrew Cuomo did get the votes of a vast majority of the executive committee. We don't like to talk about specifics because those are private meetings, whereas the full county convention and full county meetings are open to the public. But overwhelmingly supported Cuomo. So we endorsed him. And a lot of the thinking on my part with that, which I will also tell you, one of the things that I'm proud of as chair is I never dictated how I thought people should vote. I always allowed for those open discussions, and that led to some heated
Yeah,
meetings. But I always wanted people to feel like they could, they didn't need to vote the way I thought. I
yeah.
wanted them to vote the way they thought. And, it's sad to say that that was sometimes a novel approach from past county chairs
Oh, it
who
was. Yeah,
expected you to just follow the leader and not have your own opinion if you were on the executive committee. So it was a little bit contentious. But Andrew Cuomo did win that vote. And I was a vocal supporter of that endorsement because I did believe that it was what was in the best interest of the party as a whole. And that's because what we talked about earlier, the idea of who's going to be best for our down ticket candidates, who's going to pull the voters that we want voting for our down ticket candidates. Um, at the end of the day, Cuomo Cuomo lost more than Mamdani won, right? In a lot of ways. Cuomo, it was his to lose. He was leading in the polls. People knew, he had the name recognition. And it was, quite a lackluster campaign that they ran that, was
oh
really
yeah.
what I told people is I would ask so many people this, tell me something that Zoran Mamdani is going to do as mayor. And everybody was able to say, "Oh, Mamdani is going to freeze the rent. He's going to do the city go." Everybody could cite his policies, and I said, "Okay, now." And this I asked of diehard Cuomo supporters. Tell me something Cuomo's going to do as mayor. Radio
Nothing.
silence.
Yeah,
No one could name. These are people who were actively like raising money for him. Could not give me an answer to that question, which is why Mamdani won. He is speaking to the issues that matter most to regular everyday people. And Cuomo wasn't. He won that nomination. He earned our support. It is not for anyone to as a party leader or as a party member to if you're going to be involved with the Democratic Party as an executive committee member or leader, you don't override the will of the voters. You don't
yeah,
say, well, I'm going to go in a different direction.
yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, well, that's what I said. I when I read that bullshit that New York Post article, which
Oh, that was
I
such
mean,
garbage.
it was, and I said, well, why are we leaking to that rag anyway? I mean, that's another thing. But I was like, why are we leaking to that rag anyway? But I said she is doing what the party and the voters of the party wanted, and Andrew Cuomo won here, but not by much.
Not by
No,
much at all.
no.
And he's not running for they're not running for mayor of Staten Island. They're running for mayor of the city. And the
Yeah.
city the Democrats in New York City have spoken loud and clear about who they support. But let me use this opportunity right now to also make it really clear. Now that I'm no longer leader, I don't have to do what I think is in the best interest of the party alone. I can take into account my own personal beliefs. And I am still supporting Zoran Mamdani
Yeah,
100%. And it's because over time I've come to realize that he is the best candidate for the job out of everybody that is running. He has a vision for this city. He is speaking to the real problems. I don't agree with him on everything. There hasn't been a candidate I've ever worked for that I've agreed with on everything, except for maybe Matt Titone. And I think we disagreed about one thing ever in the entire time I worked for him. But for the most part, you're not going to agree with people 100% of the time. And, you know, I have faith and belief that this person as mayor is going to be able to get things done that people thought were impossible because he's swinging for the fences. We're starting, so you might take the free buses, right? Maybe we don't get free buses done, but the fact that he's bringing that to the table and he's fighting for it is going to at least mean we're going to get something, maybe some reduction in costs, maybe some additional services. At least he's trying to
right.
address the things that are impacting people instead of saying, "Oh, it's impossible," and throwing up his hands. Whereas the example I've used for people with that is if Barack Obama had started with Medicare for all, which is not something that I support, maybe we'd have a public option.
Yeah,
Maybe we wouldn't be in the middle of a government shutdown over the healthcare costs not being subsidized. So starting from a position, even if you think it is unreasonable, starting there, I think is going to get us things done that people thought weren't doable.
yeah, and well, I want to go back to the leadership committee's endorsement of Cuomo. A common criticism I heard at the time was, what was the process? How did the leadership committee decide this? Did the candidates come? And because back then there were a million Democratic candidates for mayor, and so did they come and do an interview? Were questions asked of them? How did that happen?
So we've never, I mean, the county committee has never interviewed candidates for citywide office because our job is to interview candidates for local office. So that's never happened in the 37 years that we've been here. You make decisions like voters make decisions, based on the information that you have at the time and discussions with your folks. So, that's what we
Yeah,
did. We had discussions internally about where we were going to go. When it came to the what people are calling is the endorsement of Zoran Mamdani, what I had said to the press at the time, what I said to everyone is there's no need for any endorsement. Let's start there.
yeah,
Right. So we had if you that New York Post article had someone who said, I didn't consult with the executive committee. So let's take that apart a little bit. One, there is absolutely no obligation for me to consult with the executive committee. The person that won the primary is the Democratic nominee,
yeah,
and the Democratic Party supports the Democratic nominee, period. End of story. No need for discussion. That said, because I do value people's opinions and have a commitment to transparency, we did have a discussion about the support of Zoran Mamdani. It wasn't a vote because there's no need to vote. And the idea of voting to support the person who won undermines the concept.
yeah, it does.
So we didn't have a vote, but we did have a discussion. Now, people might not have shown up like they were supposed to be at that meeting for that discussion, and that's on them. But to think that there was no discussion because they didn't participate in the discussion is that's just a blatant lie. So we did have a discussion, and no one. There were a couple of people who were supportive of Cuomo on that call, and they expressed their opinions about it. But no one didn't understand that the end result is the Democratic Party supports the Democratic nominee. You shouldn't be a member of the Democratic Party's executive committee speaking out against the Democratic nominee. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. And I wanted to also talk about the congressional race. And
I'm
um,
excited.
Yeah, well, I hope there's something to be excited about because
So do I.
I hope so because I really, Governor Hochul, if you're listening, please fix the maps. Like, please fix
Yes,
the map.
please.
Please,
Yes.
please fix the
You
maps.
don't want to get me started on gerrymandering.
Yeah,
Okay, no, I need to. I need to get this off my chest first. So
yeah,
I think the most important issue entirely is gerrymandering. There is nothing more important than fixing that. Because if the most important issue to you is climate change or economics or education, whatever that issue is, your voice is not being heard. Your issue is not going to be addressed in the way that our democracy was intended because it is not going to reflect the will of the people because of gerrymandering. So, it sounds like a boring subject, maps and, drawing lines, but it is the most crucial thing to making sure that we have a true democracy.
yeah. And well, I think there's a place for that, but I also think what Gavin Newsom is doing in California is also amazing. I think it meets the moment, and I
Yeah,
think and I think
I
that
love him.
yeah, and I think it meets the mo. I have some issues with him in terms of how he's done things, but he's meeting the moment now, so who cares? But um, I think what he's doing is fantastic. But I feel like in New York, we've sort of tied our hands with
I
our
don't
with our
understand why we didn't,
independence. You know,
why we allowed that the map with the special master, why we didn't appeal that on the grounds that it was clear that the legislative intent was that there be some independent determination, and having a one Republican special master make those lines, it completely undermined the legislative intent of the creation of the Independent Redistricting Commission. So I think the judge was dead wrong on that, and I think they should have appealed it.
yeah, well, now I think the judge that made the decision is gone, or I think the last I heard that person was not no longer on the bench, and so we may have an opportunity if she actually wants to do it and do what Gavin Newsom is doing. We may have a chance to finally get rid of this useless Congress member. And so another thing that people say is, well, Max Rose was the congressman for 2 years and lost in 2020 and got blown out in 2022. Andrea Morse made up pretty good ground last year as far as she ran 15 points ahead of Max Rose in 22. And so how do we get that seat back? It seemed for a lot of times a lot of people, it seemed too far gone. It seems too much like it seems like a tall order. The D Triple C doesn't even bother with it anymore. Like how do we get it back?
So if you saw the turnout, and I know you did, in front of her office over
Mhm.
and over and over again, whether it was with Dan Goldman in the party or with the Staten Island Action Coalition, who I adore. If you've seen the turnout in front of her office of the people who are very unhappy with the way she's been voting and how she is not representing what's in the best interest of Staten Islanders, people are speaking loudly about that, and it's actually getting some attention. At our last state convention, the chair of the state party actually said, he thought Staten Island could possibly be in play. We need folks at federal level to listen to that and hear that and understand that, there is a movement on Staten Island towards replacing her, I
Yeah.
hope. And, having the right candidate is going to matter with that. I do think that, I wouldn't have been able to say this if I was still county chair, but I'm supporting Troy McGee. I think Troy is fantastic. I think he has grown so much since his initial council race. And um, he's exactly the type of person that the Democratic Party should be running, right? Someone who is a union member, someone who understands what it's like to try to pay the mortgage on a city worker's salary and raise your kids here, and someone who is community minded, coaching and being involved with kids with disabilities. He's just the right person. It goes back to what we were saying earlier about messaging. Is he going to be able to deliver that message in a way that resonates? And, I know he's working on that. I connected him with the DCCC early on when he first expressed an interest in running to make sure that he was having the conversations that needed to be had to prep him to be the candidate if that's where the voters uh, land. And he's been doing the work. He's been raising money and knocking doors and making phone calls already. He's invested in this, and I'm really proud of where he is and where he's come. I know you're going to ask me about folks running from Brooklyn, like
Yeah,
Justin.
Justin Brannon. And so,
I
what do you
I
think about?
love Justin Brannon. I think he
Yeah,
is a fantastic person. Um, I've been with this party long enough to that my second race that I ever worked on, it was in 1992, and it was Sal Albanise's race against Susan Molinari. Um, then Dominic Recchia's race. Then I was Steve Harrison's campaign manager when he ran for Congress. Um, the people from Brooklyn, they don't do well on Staten Island. While I would love to be able to play on Justin Brennan's name recognition, I think that's helpful. I think we have a hard time selling Brooklyn candidates to a Staten Island district. We wouldn't have a congressperson representing us from our borough. There's tons of congress people from Brooklyn representing Brooklyn.
yeah.
Staten Island deserves to have someone who lives here, who understands. We're very different from Brooklyn.
Hmm.
We deserve to have someone who understands Staten Island.
Okay. And I'm of the mind that, if a primary happens, great. I think one of the
Primaries are great.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I heard last week at the Kamala Harris event was that one of the things that may have hindered her was that there wasn't a process. There wasn't a primary process. There was the delegates and the convention and all that, but there was not the kind of primary that perhaps, we're used to with multiple candidates and all that stuff, and that may have hurt her.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it did.
and so I'm hoping, whether there's a primary or not, I hope we can build enough momentum because she's just the worst. She's
Yeah.
just she's the worst. She's just the worst. I mean,
We're in agreement on that.
yeah, she's messaging it as the Schumer shutdown, even though they control everything, and even though I talked about this to my students, and I said, well, there's a couple of things happening there. They want the healthcare, but my thing, and I'm a geeky history teacher who thinks this is important, but like, why am I going to come to the table and make a deal with people who will then 6 months later say, well, I'm going to renege on that. I'm going to take all this funding out like they did with PBS and foreign aid and everything else. Why
Mhm.
would I do that? Why would I come? Yeah,
Especially when you have someone like Nicole who stood up and said, well, we're not going to stand for cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, and then voted for it
yeah. Well,
in the
people,
big, beautiful bill. And
well, I mean, were her lips moving?
you can't trust, yeah.
Well, were her lips moving? She was lying. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it is. And so, um, now, as we wind down, I wanted to get into, there seems to be a lot of work left to do. So why did you step down? Or why did you not run
Didn't,
for
did
reelection?
not,
Yeah, why did you not run for reelection?
thank you. I do think it's an important distinction. So, let me start with, one, my term was up. I decided not to run again. And, we had enacted as part of our reforms that we enacted when I became vice chair was term limits for county chairs. We tried to strengthen the executive committee and invest more power into elected representatives on the executive committee, state committee members. We created a new position of associate district leader, things that are outside the control of the county leader to try to strengthen the executive branch of the county, right? To be more um, stable long term using the folks that are elected by the full county committee as opposed to which the chair is too, but as opposed to less control in the executive, more in the
Wanted
body, right? So
you
we
wanted it to
passed
be
term
more
limits.
you wanted it to be more ground up.
Yes, exactly. So there was always the idea that the county leader should not stay as long as prior county leaders had left, and passing the torch to someone younger like Charles was always on the agenda. For me, when I said it was personal reasons, I have some personal health issues and some family obligations that when I looked about running again, I said that's not where I can't spend that majority of time doing that with these other things that are going on. So it was the right choice for the party and the right choice for me.
Okay. And what was I know that Charles Fall is now the county chairman, and what was the thinking behind that? Was there a contested fight? Was there a consensus? How did that go?
So there was no contested fight, but I supported Charles. And when I sent out my email to the county committee telling folks that I was not running again, I specifically endorsed Charles at that time before to let people know that that's what I was thinking. But it wasn't like I waved a magic wand and made him county chair. There was a vote. So, but he was the person that I supported and the person that I think is best to continue the reforms that we started. He's in the best position to bring resources into the party, to expand the work that we've done to the next and bring it to the next level.
Okay. And what are you most proud of about your time as chairwoman?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's the outreach and diversity stuff, which again still has a long way to go. So, making sure that we had a chair in that spot that was bringing new people in, which Abelarda did a really good job of, and I see the future being even better because I know the folks who are going to be involved are going to bring in even more people from more communities. We just started as part of that committee, a small business subcommittee of the Outreach and Diversity Committee because we wanted to make sure that voices were being heard specifically from small businesses. The Labor Committee, uh, a lot of the work that they did and in creating some of the position papers that we put out and hold people to has also, as something that I dreamed of, it's that still needs some work. The outreach committee still needs some work, but they've grown and become something that I am very proud of. Um, the diversity committee needs to start having more meetings and bringing more representatives in. Um, but yeah, I'd say those two committees are probably the things I'm proudest of. Oh, and the bringing the expansion and bringing new people in.
Yeah, well, I always said about you that you have a more like you always had a personal relationship with most of the county. I mean, I was president of the Young Dems, and the chair at that time, who will remain nameless, he could not pick me out of a lineup.
Yeah,
Yeah, he couldn't pick me out of a lineup, and so
that's sad.
yeah, and so I always respected the fact that you had a more personal connection to the members on the committee, and you always sort of knew everybody and knew what was going on, and I think that that's necessary. I think that's absolutely a necessary thing. And what do you wish you had more time to do?
Like the expansion of going back again. Like I know I keep talking about the outreach and diversity committee, but overseeing the further development of those two committees to be what I've envisioned them to be in the future, and where I know they will grow to as time goes on. I would have liked to have a little bit more time to bring those to where I see them going.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if I would attribute this all to county. I think Jessica herself did a really good job of this, but I think keeping that state Senate seat when it was really difficult was also really hard. It was also really
yes.
good, and it was a big it was a tall order, but you all pulled it off, and with bigger numbers than the 2022
Yeah,
election.
I'm super proud of her and that election. I think that was an incredible race, and it speaks to what a great state senator she is. Because in that district, for her to be able to outperform the top down speaks volumes about how people feel about her and the work she's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what are you going to do now?
It's a great question. I haven't figured that out yet. I mean, I still have my day job, so that
Yeah,
keeps me pretty busy. And I'm going to spend
not
more
that
time.
Not that you owe us anything. I mean, you've
Oh,
been
I'm
around
staying
forever.
involved with the party. I'm just going to take a step back and not spend every waking hour that I'm not at my day job doing stuff for the party.
Yeah.
I, I'm going to have a little bit more of a life and
Good
spend
for
some
you.
time with my family, but I'll probably also do some volunteer work. I have always done volunteer work with the National Party on voter protection rights. I'll probably do some more stuff with the New York Democratic Lawyers Council in that regard. That's kind of where my heart is right now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laura, for what a great conversation. Thank you so much. And I'm happy that you chose our podcast as your exit interview per se.
So am I. I am very excited about the things that you're doing and the people that you're reaching. It makes me really happy to know that we have someone like you who is using this type of media to, get messages out that are important and hopefully make, like you said earlier, make people feel more connected. And hopefully they do, and hopefully if they're feeling connected, they'll get involved.
Absolutely. Well, this is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage, and we'll see you next week.